Thank you, Tony. Sorry I got back from that. No, you did a great job. You kidding me? That's invite me. A few days ago, I met a man named Ron Kellogg, and I was at an event in Fort Oglethorpe, and he had a Vietnam veteran's hat on, and I walked up to him and wanted to talk to him a little bit, and I said, "Tell me about your story." He said, "Well, I was in Vietnam for a couple of years. I was in the Navy. I was on an LSD." And I said, "Well, what was that like, when you came home and all that?" And he told me this. He said, "When you came back home from the military, you didn't really want anybody to know you'd been in the military." He told me a lot of the people who served still hadn't gotten over that. If anybody's talked to a Vietnam veteran, you've heard that story probably dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, if you've had enough of those conversations. And that's why we started The Price of Freedom, because we don't want anybody to ever feel that way again. We want to hear stories and tell stories. And more than anything, we want to hear stories, right? Yeah, we put it on TV, but it's not really about that. I mean, that's what we do for a living, but I want to hear your story. I want to sit down at your kitchen table and listen to your sacrifices and why you made the choices you made and why you did the things that you did. We've had a chance to really tell a lot of stories in 8.5 years and meet a lot of veterans in 8.5 years. And it's been remarkable. But that same thing that Ron Kellogg told me, we hear over and over and over again. There's a guy in Chattanooga named Herbert Thornberry. He's a lawyer. He used to have a lot of commercials on TV several years ago. He was in Vietnam. He was a medic. And he comes home and he goes to law school. And he told me that when he went to law school, he didn't tell anybody he was in the military, because if he did, he couldn't get any dates. And if you know Herbert, you know that I cleaned that story up a little bit. But that was the gist of it. Didn't tell anybody where he'd been or what he'd done. And, as a veteran, it makes you a little angry. It hurts your heart. And you want to do something about it. And that's why we do what we do. 2013, I was in a U-Haul with everything I owned, driving from Michigan to Chattanooga, and I got a call from the man who just hired me in Chattanooga. And he said, I want all my anchors to be involved in some kind of, series of stories. We call it a franchise. It's a series of stories. And I said, I want to do stories on veterans. And immediately, all in, 100%, absolutely, go down that route. And they've been all in from day one, and we got a chance to really do some work they're really proud of, and it means a lot to me personally. I've been doing TV news for 24 years, and I've had a chance to talk to senators and governors and cover presidential visits and things like that, and all that has been, interesting and rewarding, and I've enjoyed doing it. But that's not why I do it. I don't do it for that. I had a chance to talk to Medal of Honor recipients, and they told me some amazing stories. A few weeks ago, Blaine right there in the plaid, we met Kyle Carpenter, Marine Corps veteran. He and his buddy were on a rooftop, and somebody threw a grenade on that rooftop. And he jumped on the grenade to save his buddy's life. Anybody ever seen a grenade detonated? Anybody? A few hands gone up. The idea of what that's like, that you're going to jump on top of that thing and whatever happens, happens. But the most important thing is, I'm going to save this man's life. His doctors thought he was dead. He was in a hospital for 3 years. He survived it. And he got married, I think yesterday on the Marine Corps birthday. He got married a woman from Saudi Daisy. We met a guy named Gary Bykirk a few years ago. And Gary's story is, again, phenomenal. He fought in Laos in Vietnam, fought with the Mountain Yard people. Survived it, came home. He was on a beach in Florida, just walking around a beach, praying, thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I've survived this thing that a lot of guys didn't. and now I'm home. I don't know what to do with my life. And so he decides I'm going to go to seminary. And so he moves to New Hampshire, and he moves into a cave, a literal cave. He lived in a cave. On the Appalachian Trail, he had a bike, and all of his stuff was in a cave. And so he'd take that bike, and he'd ride into class every day, and he had a P.O. box. And so he'd stop at the post office and check his mail every now and again. And one day he stops and gets this card, and it's from the Army. And they said, you need to be at this hotel at this time. We want to talk to you. And he's thinking, well, why do they want to talk to me? I'm done. I've already done my time. What's this about? Well, he goes and he takes that call, and it's the Pentagon, and they want to give him the Medal of Honor. And he at first didn't want to get it. He's like, I don't deserve it. And we hear that a lot from those guys. I didn't. A lot of folks did a lot of things. Why do I deserve this? And there's a lot of controversy too, because, you know, the time that it was, he had grown his hair out long, had this big mustache, and they said, well, you can't wear a uniform look like that. They had a big kind of to-do over that, but they worked it out. Another part of that story is he was down in the town where he was going to school, and he would take pictures. He was a photographer. And this girl saw him, and she put a note in his box, his mailbox, and said, I want to meet you. And so he's a young guy, right? So he gets this note, and he's thinking, oh, all right. So he goes and meets the girl, and they start dating and fall in love, and they decide to get married. She says, fine, we'll get married, but you got to move out of that cave. And he did. You know, the thing you'll do, right, when you're motivated to do those things. And so doing all that, meeting Medal of Honor recipients and all those folks, I mean, it's great, right? But that's not why we do it. We do it for veterans just like you, because your story matters. People need to hear your story and what you went through. Just like Ron Kellogg, right, when he said, I didn't tell anybody about it because nobody wanted to hear it. Well, that's not the way it is anymore. Your story matters. We want to hear it, and we want to tell it, because people need to hear it. And you think about how much history and how much information we've lost from people not wanting to tell those stories. And it kind of breaks your heart to think about all those folks who had to keep all that inside for so long, and then how much we've all lost out on because we can't hear the stories. And a few of those, real quick here, I'll share a couple of them. I was in the Marine Corps Reserves for 8 years, and when you're in boot camp, they give you this thick green book. It's called a green monster, they call it. Any Marines here? I think Manuel's here. He's a Marine. They give you the green monster, right? Green monster. And it's got everything in the world in there, how to dress a battle wound and what your uniforms are and how they're supposed to look and all that. But there's also a big chunk in there about history. And you learn about the big battles in the Marine Corps. Belleau Woods in World War I, and Guadalcanal in World War II, Iwo Jima, Chosin Reservoir. I've been doing these stories for about 6 months, and I get this phone call. It's a man named Clarence Shute, and he says, he's funny. He's loud and he's funny and he's cutting up, and he's telling me, he said, have you seen that picture of them raising the flag at Iwo Jima? I said, well, of course. And he said, well, I was there. I was sitting right behind the photographer when they took that picture. I was just sitting in a hole watching the thing go up. And I'm thinking, there's no way this is real. This guy can't be telling me the truth. And he said, I was in the Chosin Reservoir as well. And I'd never heard of anybody being in both those battles before. So we get off the phone, and I look him up, and sure enough, he had done all that. And so I went to talk to him. And he said he was in the Chosin Reservoir. He was captured by the Chinese, and he escaped. And he didn't eat anything for 3.5 weeks. I said, how'd you survive it? He said, I ate snow. I said, for 3 weeks you survived on snow. He says, yep, we all did. He said he went to the Marine Corps Museum up in the D.C. area, and he's walking through the Chosin Reservoir exhibit, and he sees a picture of himself on the wall. And he showed me the picture, and he's carrying, he's got a box. And I go, what's in that box? And he said, grenades. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I had a box, and I kept seeing grenades on the ground, and I'd pick them up and put them in there. I don't know who would do that, but Clarence did it. So we had a box of grenades just in case he needed them. He died in 2019. I'd give anything to call him up today and wish him a happy Veterans Day. I'd give anything for that. We've lost so many of them, so many of them. I remember talking to a man named Chester Smith from this area a few years ago. A bunch of guys from Bledsoe County met at Bimbo's restaurant over in Dayton, and sitting there and talking to him. And I know he passed away this year, and we're always feel fortunate, right, to get a chance to talk to them, because even when folks pass on, if we got part of their story, part of them is still here with us, right? And that's another reason we do it, because we lose too many World War II, Korean War, Vietnam era guys and women, and we want to capture that, and it's important. Remember one time I talked to this guy named J.C. Pemberton. He fought in Vietnam. He was in country for a year, and he told me every step he took, he thought that might be his last step. I'm sitting with him face to face at the TV station, and I'm sitting with him, and the cameraman's right here, and he brought his daughter and his grandson with him, and they're sitting back behind me. We talked for an hour, and I think, okay, I've gotten more than I need for this story. It's been kind of emotional for him. And I look around the camera to ask the daughter, is there anything I need to ask? And her face is just wet. She'd been crying the whole time. And I say, is there anything I need to ask? And she said, I had never heard half of that stuff. I never heard those stories. I've known this man my whole life. He's my dad. I never heard any of that stuff. The same thing happened. I was in Hickson, talked to a man named Howard Jabley. He brought this big photo album, all these black and white pictures. He was with a tank unit through Europe, World War II. Amazing stories. Hours we talked. And his son's there, James Jabley. I said, what do you think of all that? And he says, I never heard half of those stories. I never seen that book before. I don't know where that book came from. And clearly he had it in the attic. That man's whole life, he never saw that book. So we do it for the families, we do it for the veterans, because we don't want anyone to feel like Ron Kellogg felt, or he couldn't tell a story. Like I said, if you want to tell me your story, I'd love to hear it. Any of you veterans here, they can be with a camera, or we can just come and sit on a bench. Now Tommy will tell you, if you call me, I may not call you back right away. And Blaine will tell you I might be late a little bit sometimes, but I will call you back, and I will show up, and we will sit and talk as long as you want to talk. I want to thank you for your service, and I just want to say welcome home. Thanks for having me today. Have a great day. Happy Veterans Day.